Picture lying face down in an MRI machine. Your arms are stretched out in front of you, held in this incredibly stiff, just unnatural Superman pose.
Oh, God, yeah. Just thinking about that makes my heart rate go up.
Right. You're actively fighting off this wave of intense claustrophobia as the machine whirs and clanks around your head. But honestly, the cold plastic and the confined space, that isn't even the hardest part.
No, it's really not. It's the psychological toll.
Exactly. The hardest part is the weight. Because you're lying there, perfectly still, acutely aware that the news you're about to receive could literally dictate whether you live or die.
It's a uniquely terrifying kind of limbo. I mean, when you're trapped inside that tube, stripped of all your distractions, you are completely alone with your own biology.
Yeah, there's nowhere to hide.
Right. And every single second of waiting just stretches into an hour.
And for pop star Jessie J, that agonizing wait inside an MRI machine just a few weeks ago, in May of 2026, it ended with hours of sobbing.
But not out of fear, right?
No, not at all. It was pure, overwhelming, fall-to-the-floor relief. She had just been declared cancer-free.
Wow. What a moment.
But to actually understand how she survived that 11-month limbo and, how she kept her mind from turning on itself in that MRI machine, we have to look at the massive medical storm she weathered before she ever got that diagnosis.
Yeah, her history is just staggering.
It really is. So today we're taking a deep dive into her medical files, her intensely candid interviews, and her social media archives. We're unpacking what is essentially a masterclass in human resilience.
Absolutely.
We're going to explore how a shocking history of severe health trauma created the psychological callus she needed to survive breast cancer. And, importantly, what her highly tactical, almost radical approach to transparency can teach you about navigating your own personal storms.
Because if you look closely at the sources we've gathered, her story fundamentally rewrites the script on how to handle a devastating plot twist. I mean, we're looking at a public figure who was struck by lightning right at the absolute peak of her career. And instead of hiding, she turned the camera on herself.
So let's start with the timing of that lightning strike, because it's almost cruel in its irony. We're rewinding to June of 2025. Set the scene for us. What's happening in her world right before everything derails?
Well, she's gearing up to release a brand new track, and the title of this song is Living My Best Life.
You literally cannot write a more on-the-nose setup for a tragedy.
Right. It's almost cinematic. Right as she's about to drop this song, she starts noticing some subtle physical red flags.
Like what kind of flags?
So she feels a lump, she has this persistent achy arm, and she keeps waking up with pins and needles.
Okay, that is terrifying.
Yeah, and what's terrifying from a purely medical standpoint is the sequence of events that follows. She goes in for an initial ultrasound, and she's actually cleared.
Wait, cleared? Like they missed it?
Yeah. The imaging didn't raise the alarm. And for a lot of people, that's where the story pauses. You hear the all clear, you breathe a massive sigh of relief, and you just go back to your life.
But she doesn't do that.
No, she doesn't. She pushes for more testing. She insists on a biopsy. And it's the biopsy that delivers the blow. Early-stage breast cancer. The ultrasound missed what the tissue sample confirmed.
Oh, man. That detail alone is chilling. Just thinking about the false sense of security an initial test can give you.
It really makes you think about advocating for your own health.
Definitely. But she gets this biopsy result, and she immediately locks on the word early. Like she highlights it. And this is where her behavior severely diverges from what you'd expect from someone in the public eye.
Oh, completely.
Usually when a celebrity gets a diagnosis like this, the PR machine takes over, right? They release a very polished, sterile statement on Instagram. They quietly cancel their tour dates, and they retreat entirely to process it in secret.
Which is completely understandable.
Of course. But she does the exact opposite. She goes completely public, telling her fans the news right before stepping onto the stage for a massive, high-pressure performance at Capitol Summertime Ball in London.
That takes so much nerve.
Right. So from a psychological perspective, why become an open book the very minute your world collapses?
Well, it boils down to a profound understanding of her own coping mechanisms. She actually admitted in her posts that her reasoning was somewhat selfish.
Selfish? How so?
Because she knew she was working too hard to properly process the diagnosis internally. By putting her vulnerability out into the public sphere immediately, she basically forces a reciprocal loop of healing.
Okay, unpack that. What do you mean by a reciprocal loop?
So when you hide a trauma, you are carrying the entire cognitive load of that secret on your own shoulders. It's exhausting. But by sharing it, she invites other people's stories of survival into her orbit.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, she literally said to her audience, I need my hand held too. It's a mechanism for crowdsourcing emotional support.
That's fascinating.
And she paired that vulnerability with this intense, really dark humor. Like, she told her fans that having a mastectomy was a very dramatic way to get a boob job.
Oh my gosh.
And she promised to disappear for surgery and return with a massive test.
I mean, the sheer audacity to drop a joke like that while you are staring down major surgery. It's incredible.
It is, but it's also highly strategic. Think about it. By making the joke first, she completely defangs the tabloids.
Oh, she beats them to the punch.
Exactly. She takes ownership of her physically changing reality before anyone else can comment on it or sensationalize it.
But that instinct, to immediately deploy dark humor as a shield,
Yeah.
to manage the public narrative so aggressively, that doesn't just appear overnight.
No, not at all.
It's a psychological
Mhm.
callus. And when you crack open her medical history, you see exactly how that callus was formed.
Yeah, and that history completely shifts how we have to view this cancer diagnosis.
Right, because if you just read the headline in 2025, you think, wow, what a terrible, isolated tragedy. But surviving a mastectomy isn't even the first, second, or third major medical crisis of her life.
It's really not.
Walk us through this timeline, because it frankly reads more like a medical textbook than a pop star's biography.
The sheer volume of physiological trauma is staggering. Let's start at age 9. She is a child performing professionally in a West End musical, and she gets diagnosed with Wolff-Parkinson-White syndrome.
Okay, for those of us who don't have a medical degree, what exactly is happening in the body with that syndrome?
Basically, it means she was literally born with an extra electrical pathway in her heart.
That sounds dangerous.
It is. Normally, electrical signals in your heart follow a very specific route to control your heartbeat. But with this syndrome, that extra pathway allows the signal to bypass the normal route and essentially get caught in a runaway feedback loop.
So what does that actually feel like?
It causes sudden, terrifying episodes of an abnormally fast heart rate, like out of nowhere. So she is navigating the physical demands of professional theater as a kid while dealing with severe, unpredictable cardiac misfires.
So she learns to perform through physical panic at a very, very young age.
Exactly. But the timeline gets much darker. Fast forward to age 17.
Okay.
She is at the prestigious Brit School, which is the same launching pad that gave us Adele and Amy Winehouse. She has just signed her very first record deal, and she suffers a stroke.
At 17 years old?
Yeah.
A stroke?
Yes, right at the absolute precipice of her dream being realized, her nervous system just betrays her.
I can't even imagine.
A stroke at that age is deeply traumatic because it threatens your basic motor functions. She has spoken about the sheer terror of lying in a hospital bed, terrified she would never fully regain control of her body.
That is heartbreaking.
And it was actually that specific fear, that feeling of being trapped in a broken vessel, that inspired her to write her breakout hit song, Who You Are.
Wait, really? So her biggest professional triumph was literally birthed from her deepest medical terror?
Exactly, but it doesn't stop there.
Of course it doesn't.
In 2018, right as her album ROSC is scheduled to drop, she temporarily goes completely deaf and suffers a miscarriage.
Oh, man. At the exact same time.
Yeah. And then Christmas Eve of 2020, she wakes up, she is deaf again, and she finds she physically cannot walk in a straight line.
What was causing that?
She gets rushed to an ear hospital and is diagnosed with Meniere's disease.
I've heard of that. That's an inner ear thing, right?
Right. It's a chronic condition caused by a buildup of fluid in the labyrinth, which is the part of the ear that controls hearing and balance.
For a vocalist, that has to be the ultimate sensory betrayal.
Oh, it's devastating. The fluid buildup distorts pitch. She described the sensation of trying to sing loud as sounding like someone was trying to actively run out of her ear.
Wow.
It causes severe vertigo, tinnitus, and fluctuating hearing loss. It is a direct existential threat to her livelihood.
Honestly, I have to push back on this entire narrative for a second.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the average person surviving a childhood heart condition, a stroke at 17, losing your hearing, a miscarriage, and then a cancer diagnosis, wouldn't this much relentless trauma just leave you completely desensitized?
You would definitely think so.
Like, doesn't a person just go numb eventually?
But the sources show she views the accumulation of these events entirely differently. She doesn't see it as numbing at all.
How does she see it then?
She sees it as a forced dismantling of the illusion of control. You know, when your body fails you that many times, you stop pretending you are in the driver's seat of the universe.
Oh, that makes sense. You just have to surrender to it.
Exactly. She actually frames these events as the things keeping her feet firmly planted on the ground. And this mindset really crystallizes in 2023 when she receives a dual diagnosis of ADHD and OCD after the birth of her son, Sky.
See, getting an ADHD diagnosis as an adult is a massive paradigm shift. How did she integrate that into this history of trauma?
Interestingly, she explicitly calls her neurodivergence a superpower. But, and this is key, it's a highly managed superpower.
What does managed look like for her?
Because of her ADHD and OCD, her brain requires intense structure to function. So she utilizes what she calls her 1,000 lists just to keep daily life from crumbling.
That's a lot of lists.
It is. But by the time the cancer diagnosis arrived in 2025, she already had this elaborate ironclad scaffolding built into her daily routine just to manage her own mind.
That makes so much sense. The scaffolding was already load-bearing.
Perfectly said. And part of that scaffolding is a very specific philosophy on emotional breakdowns. She operates on a 9-55 ratio.
A 9-55 ratio. What does that mean?
She says that 95% of the time, she is actively positive, pragmatic, and strong. But when that 5% hits, when the terror or the grief just becomes overwhelming, she doesn't suppress it.
She just lets it happen.
She actively acknowledges the breakdown. She allows herself to sob uncontrollably. Her resilience isn't about maintaining a facade of invincibility. It's about letting the 5% happen, fully feeling the collapse so it doesn't fester in the background and consume the 95% of the time she needs to be functional.
That is a crucial distinction. We are not talking about toxic positivity here. We're talking about highly managed reality.
Exactly.
And man, did she need that reality check when it came time to physically recover from the mastectomy. Because the transition from her brave, darkly humorous public announcement to the grueling, unglamorous reality of recovery is incredibly stark.
It really is. The sources detail a remarkably tough physical toll. This wasn't, a neat cinematic healing montage.
Real life rarely is.
Right. Months after the initial surgery, well into August of 2025, she was facing unexpected hospital visits and battling severe post-op infection.
Oh, it sounds exhausting.
It highlights just how biologically taxing the healing process is. A mastectomy is an amputation. The surgery is just day one. The real battle is the body trying to knit itself back together while fighting off external pathogens.
And in the middle of that physical, grueling aftermath, her support system became everything.
Oh, absolutely vital.
She shared these incredibly raw, unfiltered images from her hospital bed. Her partner, the professional basketball player Chanan Colman, is just sitting beside her.
The picture of him is so touching.
It is. She jokes about him being dressed in a nurse outfit, but there are these quiet, beautiful clips of him just holding her hand, kissing her forehead.
He really showed up for her.
Yeah, and she pointed out that this is the exact same man who never let go of her hand during her C-section when her son Sky was born.
He serves as a profound emotional anchor. She actually refers to him as the calm to my crazy.
I love that.
But while her partner provided the anchor, her son provided the engine. Her visceral, immediate reaction when she first suspected the cancer was a biological imperative. She literally thought, I can't die because I have Sky.
That primal maternal drive, it's so powerful.
That drive became the core motivation for her recovery.
But rebuilding the physical strength to be a mother and a performer was incredibly complicated. Because we have to remember her medical history, right?
Yes, the heart condition complicates everything.
The Wolff-Parkinson-White syndrome, that extra electrical pathway in her heart, it dictated everything she could and couldn't do. She couldn't just jump back into heavy weightlifting or the intense Pilates routine she loved.
No, that would be way too risky.
She had focused strictly on cardio to protect her cardiovascular system, so she got a Peloton. And she made a promise to herself that I think is one of the most universally applicable takeaways from this entire deep dive.
What was the promise?
She promised to do just 10 minutes of movement a day.
10 minutes. Which sounds almost insignificant, honestly.
Right.
I mean, when you think of a global pop star preparing for the physical rigors of a world tour, 10 minutes on a stationary bike feels like a drop in the ocean.
But it is a brilliant strategy for rebuilding habits. Think about trying to repair a massive, demolished building.
Okay.
If you stand in the empty lot and look at the sheer scale of the blueprint, the cognitive load will paralyze you. You won't even pick up a tool.
Because it's just too overwhelming.
Exactly. But if you tell yourself your only job is to lay one single brick a day, It completely removes the pressure of the whole building. 10 minutes on a bike is just one brick.
I see.
The focus isn't on the intensity of the workout. The focus is entirely on the habit of showing up.
And if we view that 10-minute rule through the lens of her ADHD, it is actually a textbook management tool for executive dysfunction.
Oh, really? How does that work?
So executive dysfunction is a core symptom of ADHD where the brain struggles to initiate tasks, especially if those tasks seem multi-stepped or overwhelming.
Which a huge workout definitely would.
Right. By lowering the barrier to entry to just 10 minutes, she effectively bypasses the brain's paralysis. It's a neurological trick. You convince the brain the task is too small to avoid.
So the physical recovery is handled by the 10-minute bricklaying. But what about the mental recovery?
That's a whole different challenge.
Because surviving cancer comes with a profound amount of anxiety and trauma. How does someone with a chronically stressed, highly stimulated ADHD brain actually find a state of calm?
This was one of the most fascinating mechanisms detailed in the sources. We always hear about traditional meditation, sit still, empty your mind, focus on your breath.
Which sounds impossible for a lot of people.
Exactly. And for an ADHD brain, which is perpetually understimulated and constantly seeking dopamine, sitting in silence can actually backfire.
Makes it worse.
Yeah, it leaves a void that the brain quickly fills with internal chaos and anxiety. So she developed her own custom technique.
I love that she just invents her own tools.
She really does. She visualizes a completely made-up word, a word that literally does not exist in the dictionary, which means it has zero real-world connotations, no memories attached to it, and no emotional baggage.
And what does she do with the word?
She pictures that specific word being slowly, methodically drawn in her mind.
Oh, wow. It acts like a cognitive circuit breaker.
Exactly. When she's in a chaotic environment, like a loud awards show or sitting in a sterile, terrifying hospital waiting room, her sensory input is overloading. By forcing her brain to focus on the slow drawing of a meaningless word, she trips the breaker. She shuts off the external noise and forces her nervous system into a complete reset.
That is such a practical, mechanical way to handle anxiety. And clearly, this combination of techniques, the 10 minutes of cardio to rebuild the body, the made-up word to quiet the mind, the 1,000 lists to maintain the structure, they worked.
They absolutely did.
Because her return to the public eye was nothing short of staggering. We're transitioning from severe post-op infections in August to being back on stage just 11 weeks post-surgery.
11 weeks is a remarkably compressed timeline to go from major surgery to live vocal performance.
It's wild. She steps out at BBC Radio 2 in the park in Chelmsford, and she brings her 2-year-old son, Sky, out onto the stage with her for the very first time.
Such a beautiful moment.
And in this gorgeous, unscripted moment, he just impromptu sings Happy Birthday to the massive crowd.
Oh, that's so sweet.
It is the ultimate visual of life stubbornly continuing in the face of death. And during that set, she delivers a quote to the audience that feels like the thesis of her entire journey.
What does she say?
She says, "Life is about standing in the storm, but holding an umbrella and just moving forward."
It is a beautiful sentiment, but when you look at the context of everything we've discussed today, that umbrella isn't just a poetic metaphor.
No, it's very real.
The umbrella represents the tactical scaffolding. The umbrella is the 10-minute Peloton rule. It's the cognitive circuit breaker. It's the decision to crowdsource her healing through dark humor.
She built that umbrella herself.
Exactly. She isn't denying that the storm is happening. She is actively utilizing the tools she built over a lifetime of trauma to keep from drowning while she walks through it.
Which brings us to the climax of this timeline and back to where we started this whole conversation. Fast forward to last month, May 2026.
The 1-year mark.
Yes, it is time for the 11-month checkup. She posts an incredibly vulnerable update on Instagram. She's waiting for the MRI scan. She's joking about being claustrophobic, pretending she's not panicking while holding that stiff Superman pose inside the magnetic tube.
Deploying that humor shield one final time.
Right. And then the results come in. Cancer-free. She writes about bursting into tears, sobbing for hours, finally exhaling after holding her breath for almost a year.
But the true victory here isn't solely the medical clearance.
What do you mean?
It is the psychological evolution that allowed her to reach that finish line intact. During a tour stop in New York a bit earlier in the year, she articulated a profound philosophical shift.
What was this shift?
She realized that to survive the sheer terror of this past year, her public persona, Jessie J, the unbreakable, polished pop star, and her private self, Jessica Cornish, the terrified patient and mother, had to completely merge.
Wow. The cognitive load of keeping those two identities separate must have been crushing.
The energy required to compartmentalize your personal terror while performing your professional duties is biologically exhausting.
I can't even fathom it.
By merging the two, by bringing her messy human reality onto the stage and into her Instagram feed, she removed the burden of masking. She allowed Jessica and Jessie J to support each other.
So as we pull back out of this deep dive, what is the ultimate takeaway for the listener? We started by examining a terrifying medical diagnosis that struck right on the verge of a major career milestone.
It easily could have broken her.
But because she had survived a lifetime of medical battles, from childhood heart anomalies to a teenage stroke to losing her hearing, she already had the blueprints for survival.
She was prepared.
She had her anchor in her partner, her engine in her son, and a highly tuned set of psychological tools tailored specifically to her neurodivergent brain.
And above all, she utilized a commitment to radical vulnerability. She just refused to carry the weight of her reality in secret.
So for you listening to this, the application is clear. You are going to face unexpected, derailing news at some point in your life. The track is inevitably going to collapse under your feet.
It happens to all of us.
But Jessie J's story proves that you don't have to face the collapse with a facade of toxic positivity. You don't have to pretend you're invincible.
Right. You can admit you are terrified.
Exactly. You can rely on your own version of 1,000 lists to bypass your paralysis. You can try for hours. You can allow yourself to completely break down for that 5% of the time, as long as you keep utilizing your tactical umbrella to navigate the storm for the other 95%.
Such a powerful framework.
It really is. But I want to leave you with a final thought to chew on today, building on that crucial realization she had in New York.
The merging of the two selves.
Yes. Think about your own daily life. How much of your own vital energy are you spending trying to keep your personal struggles and messy realities entirely hidden from your professional or public life? What kind of profound relief and genuine human connection might you find if you finally drop the act, remove the burden of masking, and allow those two versions of yourself to just be one?